Hey everybody, I'm Invisiblekatana, and today is Video Games Day, and I figured it's a perfect time to do a video specifically about video games, even though I do that quite often, because technically I do Let's Plays. But I was like, this is a day to, talk about games of the past, as well as, some games from the present, and I thought the first video that I would do would simply be your favorite games, or more specifically, the games that really shaped you as just a person, because games can do that. Games can definitely have that impact on people. For some people, it's, kind of like me. I've been playing games since I was a little kid. Like, ever since I've grown up, my dad got, like, the Super Nintendo, we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time. And pretty much ever since TMNT, it's just been video games, my whole life. Some people, it's not like that. Some people play games when they're young, they lose them for a couple years, then we kind of pull them back in, and, then they're stuck with us. But, for me, it's always been kind of a day one sort of thing. And I thought, instead of just, this is my favorite game or anything like that, it's like games that really shaped me and, made me say, like, this is the path that I want to take in life as far as, some stuff as far as, like, even what I want to do as a job. And I wanted to start with my favorite franchise. It does, those things do tend to kind of fall in line if it happens to have shaped you in some way. Although some things can be bad, some people can have games that shape them, that did, take them away from games. If there's something you played that you just absolutely hated, and it just, took you out of games for like 5 years, and then another great game brought you back, that definitely counts as well. So it doesn't always have to be your favorite, but for me, considering nothing ever, made me like stray away from games, most of these are like, some of my favorites. But I wanted to start with what is my favorite franchise, and that is actually Resident Evil. This is actually like the second copy that I bought, and hopefully I can show this. I have to say this because YouTube is really dumb. I might not get monetized for this because it's Resident Evil. It might not matter, never mind. But Resident Evil is my favorite franchise, and it's like it was like my first true introduction to like horror, the horror genre. Like, I'd seen movies, back probably, like most people, probably saw some horror movies a little too early, mostly, the Nightmare on Elm Street films, the first and second one I did. But Resident Evil was always that thing where it was like, this is that mature game that's also scary. There are other mature games. There was, Metal Gear at the time. Some of the Grand Theft Auto games were still out, even though that was like back when like 1 and 2 were out. They were still, considered like super mature. Mortal Kombat. I'm as old as Mortal Kombat, so like the year I was born is the year Mortal Kombat came out. So Mortal Kombat was out when I was growing up as well. So there are definitely some things in there where it was like, this is mature. But Resident Evil was mature in the way that, not as, gory as Mortal Kombat, but there was, of course, a lot of blood and stuff in the first Resident Evil, but also it was scary, and it was like combining those two things where it was mature and it was scary, and I was like, what do I do next? And the puzzle solving, especially when I was younger, it was just a very interesting thing, and growing up, I always loved that, and it just stems from the first Resident Evil game going all the way up until Resident Evil 7, which I really love. Resident Evil 7, I'm glad that it went back, to its more horror-based roots. I thought that was a really fun game. I'm looking forward to the DLC that's coming out. And, I know the ups and downs of the franchise. I'm not delusional where it's like, it's my favorite franchise and it shaped me so everything's perfect. I'm not like that. Like, if it's not good, or, even if, personally speaking, I didn't like it, I can admit that. I know the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the games I wanted, the games I did not. Although, I've wanted every game, admittedly. It's just like, that first taste is free, back in the day where sometimes, you have a cousin who might have a game and that first taste is free and just like, ugh, that's nasty. So that's why I never bought Resident Evil Survivor, because I hated that when it came out. And fortunately, that was like the one time I played a Resident Evil game and I was very unhappy. But after that, everything was good, because that was after 2, but before 3 came out, and I love 3. That's one of my favorite Resident Evil games. But Resident Evil has definitely shaped me over the years. It's, such a big deal that I get pop figures for Valentine's Day for my girlfriend and stuff like that, because that's how much I love Resident Evil. It's just one of my favorite, it's my favorite franchise. It's definitely some of my favorite games without a doubt, and whether it's more horror based or more action based, I still love the Resident Evil games. I can always go through, the more action oriented ones, 4, 5, and 6, and I can still find something in there. At the time, 5 was always my least favorite. I think 5 still, well, I shouldn't say least favorite out of like all the Resident Evil games, but out of the last couple, 5 was, I know people hated 6, but for me, 5 was like, going from 4 was like, okay, it's a nice blend at least of action and horror. 5 was just straight up action. I was like, oh, I'm very disappointed in that. But I do love Resident Evil. It definitely shaped me. Like I said, it was like that first taste of the horror genre for me, for sure, and it's just been a part of my life ever since, playing, the old games all the time, buying multiple copies of this and stuff like that. But I love Resident Evil. It always shaped me. It's always been like that thing that led me into being like, if I love this, I'm probably going to love these horror games as well. So it kind of led me into playing other horror games, which have been super freaking sweet. But another little franchise that has recently made a nice little return, Sonic. So I love Sonic. Been playing Sonic since Sonic the Hedgehog 2. My cousins had it. This was one of the games where it was like, love the crap out of it, never owned it myself. It was that sort of situation. And my cousins always had it, and I would always play it there. And that's one of the weird ones that kind of shaped me, because that was more, it wasn't like, you know, kind of with Resident Evil, where that was sort of a solo thing for me. For Sonic, especially because I never owned it myself, that was like the growing up thing, like growing up as a kid and having my cousins, and I always go spend the night at my aunt's house and spend the night with my cousins, and we would play through Sonic 2 all the freaking time, and eventually Game Shark and, you know, getting Super Sonic and stuff like that. And that was just more of shaping me, like, just as a young kid, having that, you know, bonding experience with my cousins, and we played the crap out of that. And then to kind of go along with Sonic, and this was years later, back, you know, back when the Dreamcast came out, and I'm still hoping, I don't know if this will ever happen, but I know there's some people like me, Power Stone on the Dreamcast, specifically Power Stone 2, man, those two games were like, I don't know, if I had a tracker, like how we can track how many hours we put into games today, if I had a tracker for how long I played Power Stone 2 with my cousins, it would be ridiculous. Like, we would spend entire days, because it was, you know, this is before Smash Brothers, and it was like a 4-player co-op sort of game where you fight in an arena and you pick characters. And it was nuts. We would play that game so much. And it was the same cousins as with Sonic. And it was very interesting, because I think the first Power Stone I used to play with a different group of cousins, and then when Power Stone 2 came out, it was the cousins who had Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and we would play that game like crazy. We haven't played it in years, but I'm telling you, we put so much time into that game, it was absolutely ridiculous. Like, we would just play for hours and hours and hours and go through these freaking maps, and I wish that game would get remastered. Like, that's one of those games where I'm always like, man, I just wish that would get remade so bad. If someone could add like an online component to it or something, or even if they didn't, I'd probably still buy Power Stone just to play it at the house. Like, it's just one of those games. Like, I have amazing memories of us just playing for hours and hours, just not eating, not sleeping, just up super duper late, playing the same game. It never changed. It's not like, let's do this. Like, sometimes we do story mode, but for the most part, it was like, let's just go ahead and just do the 4-player match. It would be 3 of us and then 1 computer. And we would just do that all the time. And that's all we did. We just play a game, pick up crazy weapons, and fight, and just the whole night, all the time, every time I was there. Power Stone. So Power Stone is definitely one of those things where, much like Sonic, it was that sort of bonding experience, because I never had it myself. And plus it was, well, Sonic was definitely a single-player sort of experience, but that was meant to be a multiplayer thing where you go and, you know, play with friends. So that was definitely one of those games that shaped me, because it was just like that bonding time that we had when we were younger, just spending hours on Power Stone. It's insane. Like, I really do wish that I had an exact amount of hours that we played. Just like no story, no nothing. It was just the 3 of us trying to win against each other and having, you know, using these crazy weapons and crazy abilities and stuff. Really fun game. If you've never played Power Stone, I don't know why. I can't remember exactly who made it. I don't know if Sega was just the publisher or if they actually developed it, but for some stupid reason that game has never been put out again. The last time that came out was on like PSP, and they did a collection of the first 2 games, and they added other characters to play as, but for some reason they just never brought it back, and I've always thought that was a terrible idea, because it's such a great game. And the levels are really crazy, because some, you know, pretty much all the levels would move. So it's like, all right, you're in this location, and then the location changes. You're on a flying pirate ship, and then you drop to this location, and then you're back on the pirate ship, and then there's like this crazy level where you're like in a tomb or whatever, and the ground starts to fall down after a certain amount of time, and then you go through like this crazy sequence where you're running from a boulder like Indiana Jones, but you can also fight each other. So it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna kick you so that you fall, get crushed by the rock. I'm gonna try to jump over the, you know, the hole in the ground. Maybe I miss, and I still fall to my death. And it's just like silly stuff like that. So really missed that game, but that was definitely one of the ones that certainly shaped me as far as just, you know, that's, like I said, just that bonding experience. And then moving into like more recent stuff, I realized over time, you know, like anyone who plays games, at some point you realize, like, alright, I love games to the point where I would like to make video games. Like, that's what I wanted to do when I first went to college. College sucks, so I ended up changing majors and not doing that because they didn't have anything related to video games like they touted. Because they had like a whole spiel that I went through, and then I went to my school that I graduated from. I was like, yeah, that you guys kind of lied. You made it seem like a big deal. There are like 4 classes that you take at the end of software engineering. It was really nothing to do with video games. So I was like, all right, well, wanted to make games all my life, and then I realized, well, as much as I would love to do like the design, what I like more than anything is the story. Like, so I wanted to go more into writing. And some of the games that kind of stand out in my mind, and these aren't necessarily, they're kind of in this gray area because I wouldn't say they really shaped me. They're just definitely games that I look back on where I'm like, these are definitely games that I look at least as examples of exactly why I want to write and, you know, make stories for video games. And a lot of them, or a couple of them at least, come from the same developer, and that's the Max Payne games. I love Max Payne. Like, I love the noir style of it. Of course, the action is cool, you know, bullet time and everything. But all 3 of those games are great. Even though Remedy wasn't actually involved in the 3rd game, which that was probably one of the most surprising things, because I actually liked the 3rd Max Payne game, because I was like, I don't know, is, you know, Remedy not being a part of it when it was like this with 1 and 2. Max Payne 3 is actually really great. I was like, alright, they did not fail Remedy. Remedy didn't really touch 3, but it was still a great Max Payne game. And those games, the stories, they're dark, and the noir feel to it, it's just fun. Like, I love those games, and just how you get like this feeling for this character and how you want to go through this story. It's a bit of a simple story. It's, you know, just betrayal, and then you go through and you get corruption and stuff like that. But it's just the way it's done, and of course the noir style definitely adds to some of that element as to why I like the story of those games. But those definitely always stick out in my mind. And then another one from Remedy that unfortunately didn't sell, and I know some people don't really care much for it, but Alan Wake is honestly one of my favorite games of all time. Like, when I first got that game, once again, horror genre, it like blew my mind. It was just like, the story for that game is phenomenal to me. I know for some people, especially because it was one of those games that like took forever to finally come out, and I know it's not like, you know, any game that takes forever to come out, it's not going to be like, oh, it took this long, so of course it'll be this good. That's never going to, you know, really be the case. But I thought it was great. You know, personally speaking, I thought it was a phenomenal game. Like, I wish more people, you know, bought Alan Wake, because I feel like that's part of the reason we don't officially, you know, have an Alan Wake 2, because the game unfortunately just never sold that much. I think it was like, it took years for that game to sell 1 million copies, and I remember reading that and I was like, I'm happy that it did that. It just sucks that it took so long, because that's one of my favorite games of all time. And just the way the story unfolds and the writing, it's so well done to me. Like, I think that is definitely one of the best written games that I've ever played in my life. Just the way they do the story, and the characters are funny. This is just something in general with Remedy. They get Poets of the Fall, who is like a Finnish rock band. They get them to make music. They made the Late Goodbye for Max Payne 2, and they made both the songs, or I guess technically all 3 of the songs for Alan Wake, where it's Children of the Elder Gods, Poet and the Muse, and then for the Alan Wake American Nightmare they have one, and I can't remember the name of that song, but they made like 3 custom songs, because the Poets of the Fall play a different band inside the game called the Old Gods of Asgard, and those are some great freaking rock songs. If you like rock music, you should listen to the songs that they made for Alan Wake, because if you haven't, like, you're missing out, because those songs, every time I hear them, I'm like, this should be on the radio. Like, people, like, I listen to, you know, like the rock stations, I'm like, this song from Alan Wake could totally be on a rock station, and no one would know that it's from a video game, because it's perfect. It's some great music. But Alan Wake is one of those games that definitely shaped me as far as why I really want to write stories. Whether it's for video games or not, I just want to write, but I would prefer it just because I love video games. But Alan Wake is definitely one of those games, and the Max Payne games as well, just going through those stories. The Uncharted games, I think, are really good examples, but I look more at, like, specifically Alan Wake. Max Payne, I've always loved that style. Like I said, I feel like the noir element of it adds a lot to the story, because the story itself is admittedly kind of simple. It's like drugs and corruption in the police force and stuff. It's, you know, it's a procedural drama, really, but it's a noir drama, so it just adds certain elements to it. Plus the gameplay is all, you know, bullet time and slow motion, and it's super freaking fun. But yeah, for Alan Wake, it's like, man, that just gets me. Like, every time, it's just like, the story for this I love, and the way they do the supernatural elements, and this the crazy element of this town and people disappearing and stuff like that. Really well done. Like, just the first time I played through that game, I was like, this story is absolutely phenomenal to me. And it's just one of those games that I always look back on as far as the story elements and why, like, how I want to write stories. Whether it's, like I said, for video games or not, just having a story that's that epic to me is the type of thing that I really want. So those are just, some of the things I wanted to do as far as this little video. Like I said, games that shaped me, some, most of them being some of my favorite games. But it was, it's a simple little list for me, and I just thought it was something worth sharing. Of course, I would love to know what games shaped you guys, whether it's because it was good, whether it was something bad. Like I said, for some people, a game could have just completely ruined your experience, and that's shaped, that just changed your course of life. Like, you would be a totally different person if you didn't, like, skip on that 5 years of video games because, I don't know, maybe you just couldn't freaking beat Shao Kahn. Like, it's fighting him sometimes, depending on the Mortal Kombat game, it'll piss you off. So I don't know, but I would love to know what games shaped you guys. I mentioned right in the beginning of this, Ninja Turtles. I kind of skipped over that just to go to, like, some of my favorites, but Ninja Turtles was definitely, like, the earliest experience for sure because, Super Nintendo, and that's still one of my favorite games. Turtles in Time is the junk. Like, honestly, I love that game. But like I said, I would love to know what games you guys feel shaped you, whether it was in a good way or a bad way. You can also throw in your favorites. Like I said, they don't, just because it shaped you doesn't mean it's one of your favorites. Like I said, the Uncharted games, I wouldn't, well, some of them, Uncharted 2 I do love, 2 and 4, 1 and 3, I do love them, but not as much as 2 and 4. Especially Lost Legacy that recently came out, I love that too, that was really fun. But, yeah, I would love to know what games shaped you guys. I am going to do another video after this one, which is going to be games that I just missed. Games that I still want to play that are just there. It's always like that game right there, but I haven't played it. So that'll actually be the next video that I end up uploading. So definitely check that out. I'll either put a link in the description or I'll just add, like, a little box at the end of this once that video actually gets uploaded. But we'd love to know which games shaped you guys, whether it was good or bad, whether they're favorites or even, like I said, even if it shaped you because you hated it or something. I would love to know that story. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.